From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Chris Conta here on MorningLine. Thank you so much for joining us on this Tuesday morning. We are talking about elder care today, and we have with us our guest, Tim Takis, who comes in from time to time to talk about elder law. Tim, we were just talking, yesterday was a big day for a lot of folks.
Yeah, absolutely.
The filing deadline,
Yes.
tax season came to a close. Is there...
For some of us.
For some of us,
That's
yeah,
right.
I know.
Yeah,
Actually, I had to
exactly.
file an extension on a couple of things.
Absolutely, right.
In terms of, you know, maybe our elder folks, grandparents, taxes, I mean, are these things that you need to be worried about now? I mean, you know, like, are there things that are different in terms of the elderly, in terms of taxes?
You know, that's interesting you mentioned that because, you know, a lot of times what we see when we're talking to our clients and our families about the taxes, sometimes what we like to think about it as what we do is sort of confounding expectations. Like, to give you an example is that we have people that come into our office and maybe they're 70 years old and they have an IRA or something like that. And the usual thing that people are told is that, well, you know, you need to stretch out the, you know, like the required minimum distributions, because when you get to 70 and a half, you know, you have to start taking them. You know, and people are told, well, you say you have $100,000 in an IRA and you want to sort of stretch that out as long as possible. For many of our clients, our older clients, that's not necessarily such a good idea. You know, and let me give you an example of that. For instance, you have let's say you have an older person who is, say, living in assisted living, and they have an IRA. A lot of assisted living expenses are potentially tax deductible, you know, as a healthcare expense. And so for people who have an IRA, it might benefit for them to take more out of their IRA so that they can use that assisted living expense as an offset, you know, as a medical expense deduction, you know, towards the higher income. You know, another thing that we see for people who have IRAs and other qualified plans like that, if their income, their other income is otherwise low, like for instance, maybe they have a Social Security income and that's it, but they have IRA income, maybe it's better for them to start taking more than their required minimum distribution, because they might be able to take out more and not have to pay tax at all.
Right.
You know, and then take the money out and invest it. So, you know, there are a lot of things out there that, you know, we tell people that be careful about what you hear and what you are told, you know, that because some of those some of the, I guess you call the received wisdom, you know, the wisdom out there is not necessarily going to be applicable to your situation.
But something, you know, I was running into this year was the capital gains tax, and, you know, selling some stock, and you know, but some of that applies to IRA when you're using some of that money and it's taken out.
Exactly.
And you know, do a lot of people, older people, maybe realize, you know, if they haven't been maybe taking money out of that pension or that IRA, that hey, there is going to be that stock, and you know, you could potentially get hit pretty hard come April.
Exactly, and that's where, you know, when we often say when a person gets older, and particularly if they start having, if their medical expenses go up, that all of their estate and their financial planning and their long-term care planning all needs to change. You know, so for instance, your estate planning needs to change, because if you are a disabled or incapacitated person, or let's say you have a disabled or incapacitated spouse, your estate planning needs to change. If you're needing long-term care and you start looking at how am I going to pay for that long-term care, you have to think carefully about, okay, where's the money going to come from to pay for that? You know, so maybe you do have stock that you've had for. I mean, we have people that, you know, walk into our office, and we don't see as many of these anymore, but it's kind of funny when you see, you know, Chris, that, you know, our older clients are walking in there and they have a stack of stock certificates.
Paper stocks,
yeah, it's really.
I mean, my grandma still has, you know, stocks of IBM and shares of, PepsiCo.
And they're beautiful, you know. I mean, they're like engraved and everything else, and they're gorgeous, you know. But they're so hard to deal with. And so you're saying is, okay, I remember I had one lady that, she bought one share of stock in a company. She went through a community college, an investment course, in the 1930s, and this instructor said, well, you need to buy pharmaceuticals. So she bought like one share or two shares of Merck. And by the time she walked into my office, probably 15 years ago, she had $800,000 in stock. That's all she ever had. And it literally, she never did anything with it. It just literally sat there, but she still had that original stock certificate.
Well, so almost though, from a planning purpose, when you talk about something like that, maybe if you do have paper stocks stacked away somewhere, you talk about maybe, how planning needs to change once, you retire or get older. Yeah. I guess I would look at a situation like that and almost say, not to be literal here, but you need to take stock of those kinds of things so that you can use that to plan better.
Exactly.
Because maybe this person, is 70 or 80 and all of a sudden realizes they have, that kind of money, which could probably really help them with their living expenses and those kinds of things.
Exactly. And then so, like say my client, who had $800,000 worth of stock, she never spent any of it. She never wanted to do anything with it. And by the time, she walked into my office and she was 90 years old and she wanted to leave it to one of her grandchildren with a stipulation that you were never to sell it. And I told her, I said, maybe you should just not put a stipulation like that because it's not going to be worth anything to her then.
Right.
And it was very interesting to me because you could tell she thought for a second and she said, you're right. How she valued that stock, as sort of being her security blanket all her life, to impose that value on her grandchildren, a grandchild that, well, I'm gonna leave it to you, but you're never to sell it. It's like, well, you might as well just not give it to her then.
I feel like I should go buy a stock of Merck.
Yeah, or something, or what the next big thing is, and it's kind of interesting when you have somebody that, the next big thing, but you're right about taking stock because, it's like, okay, you have somebody that, they're 75 or 80 years old, and you're looking at, okay, where's the money going to come from to take care of yourself? If you start taking the money out, what are the tax consequences going to be? Is it better to take this from this pool over here, maybe that is not being taxed, or maybe that if you take it out, it's going to be taxed? Because it's often, if you're going to use money that's like retirement plan money, that hasn't been taxed yet, we often always say is that, use that money first for your long-term care cost. So your retirement plan money, that money comes out, then, okay, yeah, there's a tax consequence to that, but you offset it with your medical expense deduction. If you have stock that's like highly appreciated and you sell some of the stock to pay for your assisted living, yeah, there's going to be capital gains, but you're probably going to be in a lower tax bracket anyway. And
you're saying sometimes you can write some of that off.
You write it off, exactly.
Could that person have gifted that stock to their grandchild while they were still alive, or no?
Well, if they did, we always, when I always think about the gifting part, I think about the gifting of anything, for an older person, because, looming the looming specter there becomes, what if they need extended care in a nursing home, and they give money or property away? Now you have a 5-year Medicaid look-back period. Yeah. And that's the real rub there, and we often talk a lot about that on the show, for people that are going, well, should I give my money to my kids or my grandkids so the nursing home doesn't get it? And it's always like, well, maybe that's a good idea if you have maybe some time to plan, but, I usually say is that you give things, there's a lot of reasons to give things away, but if it's, if you're going to give something away so the nursing home doesn't get it, it's a better option to do it in a different way. You transfer that, put that money in a trust instead of giving it outright, because the expectation is that, okay, I'm going to give you this money and you're going to hold it in case I need it. Yeah. Well, children are, sometimes the way I put it is that they're the most unreliable people on the planet.
It's true.
Speaking from a child's perspective, it's like, okay, Mom, I'll give you this. Give me your money, and I'll hold it for you in case you need it.
Yeah.
Unless I need it. Unless I need it
first.
more.
Yeah,
exactly.
Tim Tackett's an attorney in elder law, is joining us this morning here on Morning Line. Reminder: if you want to call in and ask us any questions, ask Tim any questions. He's a great resource. 615-737 plus 615-737 plus. We are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.